Hi, I'm Steve Beisel, and welcome to this video where I'm going to demonstrate the installation of the Forza Componenti exhaust bypass controller on a Ferrari 360. I'm the developer and sole manufacturer of this device, and I want to demonstrate this to show you how easy it is to install. First off, let's go over what you get with the kit when you order it. There's the controller module. The controller module includes a couple of connectors, a ground wire and an antenna wire. There's a remote control transmitter key fob. Depending on whether you order one or two, the kit comes with one, but an extra one is available. There's two connector cables. There's a long cable and a short cable, and there's some means for attaching the controller module into the car, some cable ties. This is a roll of very high bond 3M adhesive, and these are some 3M attachment devices called Dual Lock. It's kind of like Velcro, but it's better, much more positive and easier to install than Velcro and longer lasting. The kit may actually include a small box of the Dual Lock, or it might have a couple of strips depending upon whether I got any more of these. I might just include the Dual Lock strips. So that's what the kit comes with. Okay, so here's the Ferrari 360, and let's go over real quickly what we need to know before we get started. So first off, the first thing you have to do is to locate the exhaust bypass valves. So there's two exhaust bypass valves on the 360. One is right down here. This is the exhaust bypass valve on the right side, and then over here on the left side is a similar one, obviously the left side valve. The valves are controlled by a couple of solenoids. Now there's a solenoid on the right side, which is fairly easy to locate. On the Modena, it's right behind the F1 pump and reservoir. If you are a manual transmission, the pump and reservoir won't be there, and it'll be much more evident. There's a small gray device right down here. Now that gray device is the vacuum solenoid for the right-hand side. There's one on the left-hand side, which is very similar. But the left-hand side is somewhat obscured and may be difficult. I'm going to pull these connectors out of the way, and then there is a gray solenoid down in there, and that gray solenoid is where the vacuum is to control the left-hand valve. So we got to know where they are, and once we've identified them, then we can continue to work. Now the first thing that you have to do when you get your kit is that you have to understand how the solenoid valves work. Now on the 360, when you first start the car, the solenoid valves will be closed. Initially, after starting, if the car is cold, they will open for a short period of time, and then the ECU will close the valves again. The valves will normally remain closed at low RPM and low throttle positions. At higher RPMs, the ECU will then open the valves. It's important on your car that you understand the valve operation. What is the position of the valves when you first start, and what is the position of the valves when you reach 4,000 RPM? On the 360 and the 430, they will be closed at start and open at high RPMs. Now the first thing we have to do before we actually install the controller module is to determine a location for it. And I'm going to demonstrate on this car, which is the 360 Modena, where I'm going to install the control module behind the left-hand bay panel. We could just as easily choose the right-hand bay panel, but I'm going to show the left and demonstrate how easy it is to install. Off the engine bay panel on the Modena, we're going to have to remove the this gas strut assembly that holds the rear deck up. So I want to support the rear deck in anticipation of removing that strut. I'm going to use this extension pole and just put it down in here and then put it up here to support the rear deck when I take that strut off. Now I've already gone ahead and removed most of the screws here, and I only got one more screw here. So I'm going to take this screw off to get this panel out, and I'm just going to carefully pry it away. There we go. And and then the panel comes off fairly easily. Now I'm going to reattach this strut for safety purposes. And there we go. So we have some locations here where we could potentially install that controller module. Some people have used cable ties and just tied it up to one of these struts here. There's another location perhaps you could put it on top of the gas tank in here. But what I'm going to demonstrate is the use of that dual lock adhesive. And I'm actually going to stick the controller module on the back of the engine bay panel. And you can see there's a large void right in here. And what I'm going to do is to stick this controller right on the engine bay panel at about this location. And that's a very easy thing to do. That dual lock adhesive is designed to withstand temperatures up to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So having the panel here, it'll be shielded from the exhaust system, and it should be just fine. And the control wire, as you can see, there's lots of places we can install the actual ground, or the ground wire, sorry. And then the antenna we can just extend off here. Okay. Now, there's a fairly good flat spot right here in the engine bay panel, and I could demonstrate putting this controller here. And what I'm going to do is to use those adhesive backing strips and stick that thing right about there, and I'm going to rest it right on this nut right here. Now, if you're worried about using the adhesive strips, you can of course use the cable ties, but I thought I would actually demonstrate this. Now, to prepare the surface, on the controller module is a powder coated finish, and it has a textured finish on it. I advise before you use the adhesive that you take a piece of sandpaper like Wet and Dry and make this nice and smooth, because the textured finish won't stick as well if you as opposed to smoothing it off. I'm not going to do that in this demonstration, but I'm just advising you to go ahead. Back of the engine bay panel, and also the substrate where we're going to be sticking on the other adhesive. 3M recommends you use alcohol. I've got some denatured alcohol here, so I'm just going to clean this off and get the dirt and oil off of that. And then the same with the back of the control module. You will, of course, if you're using the adhesive, you will have sanded that down, and it's okay to bring it down to the bare metal. Now let's just go ahead and apply these strips. Okay, each strip comes with a backing piece, and you just have to remove the backing piece and apply the backing to the controller. The four corners onto the back of the controller, and I'm just peeling off just a bit of the backing here. Now avoid actually touching the adhesive with your fingers, and then gently position this backing piece just touching the corner a little bit here. Now the next step is, without pressing down too hard, peel off the backing strips. And then we're going to position these right on the back of this engine bay panel, and then I'm going to remove the cover so that I can press hard with the strips that I just applied. So I'm just going to position them right there. And now that I've got them positioned, I'm going to remove these four and then push down good and hard onto the back of the panel. Make sure that that adhesive is firmly adhered. Now I probably should have moved it over here a little bit so I didn't have this gap, but for this demonstration I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Now once you get those firmly placed, then bring back the controller again, and let's look how we want them in here. We want the plug to the back side, and just position the four corners there, and then just press it down. Now, press down until you hear it click. The click is the engagement of those dual lock fasteners. And there we go. Now, the dual lock fastening system is rated at 20 pounds per square inch. I got 4 square inches on here. So there's 80 pounds, it'll take 80 pounds of force to remove that. And after a few hours, that adhesive sets pretty well, so there's really no danger of that falling off. If you ever have to remove it, gently come into the back side with a screwdriver and just gently pry it up. But this is ready to go. We're going to test fit this panel, make sure that there's no interference. When we position the panel into its final resting point, and there we go. So that's going to work out just fine. Now we have to make some connections, and then we'll be ready to go. And remember, I told you at the start of this video that we have a short and a long cable. Obviously, you're going to use the long cable to run from the point at the furthest of the car back to the controller. So in this case, we're running from the right-hand solenoid valve over to the controller. Now, this cable has 2 connectors on it. They're called JPT connectors, and there's a female and a male. You have to reach down in here, and unfortunately the video is not going to do this justice because my hands are going to preclude this, but you need to unplug the connector that's on the solenoid valve and plug the male side of this connector into the wire that you just connected, and then the female side goes on to the valve itself. I got that one plugged in, and it's pretty easy to do. It's a little bit of a touch and feel because you don't have a lot of room. You have to then route your cable back to where you had positioned the controller. I'm just going to temporarily lay this up and go across because I want to shorten this video and not have an awful lot of excess time. So first we position the left-hand cable, or in this case the right-hand cable, and I'm going to go ahead and connect the left-hand cable. In the left-hand cable, I said you know, there's not a lot of room back in there. Now, I'm going to tell you on the 360 on the Modena, if you remove the bulb holder, the inside bulb holder, it'll give you just enough room to reach your hand in there and to make the connection. If you still don't have enough room, you can try removing the outside bulb holder. If that still doesn't work, with a couple of bolts you can remove the outside tail light assembly. Now on my car, I find that just removing the inside bulb holder is all that it takes. And the bulb holder is held on with 2 thumb screws, so it's very easy to remove. Just be careful you don't crack the bulbs when you take the bulb holder out. That'll give you enough room to reach in there and to connect up the connectors on the cable. Otherwise, you might have to remove the outside tail light. On the Spider version, you might find it's easier to actually remove the outside, or the wheel, the left rear wheel, and reach in there from inside the mud flap. That might actually be easier. Anyway, I'm going to make the connection and I'll see you in just a second. Connected up to the solenoid valves. Now on your controller, one of these connectors will be identified by a red band or by a red protective boot. If you only have one solenoid valve, you connect it to that red connector. But I have 2. I'm just going to go ahead and make the connections. I have a ground wire. I have to find a place to make a suitable ground. And there's a couple of locations here. I'm just going to take my wrench out and connect it up to one of these ground points, and I'll be back here in just a second. Okay, I've got the ground, and I got the ground attached right here. And the other thing you have to do is to make sure you extend the antenna wire. I got a piece of some black putty here that's used to secure windows, windshields. I'll just stick that on the back there. That'll secure it. You can use a piece of tape that would be working on a high temperature or a piece of cable tie will work just fine. The next thing we have to do is to start the car up and make sure that the controller works in the way that it's supposed to function. So let's go ahead and start the car. Okay, we're going to start the car up and make sure the exhaust bypass valves work in their default mode, which is the way we noted before we started this project. Running, and you can see we haven't secured the cables yet, but I have a racing exhaust on this 360, so in the default mode it's a little bit loud. Let's check the remote control, make sure it works. As you can see, you press the left hand button on the remote control and you can hear the difference. Press the right hand button, it returns control back to the ECU. There's quiet mode, and there it is in the heavier, louder tone. So the exhaust bypass valve is working exactly the way it should. A is on, A is open, B is closed. A is open, B is closed. So we verified that the valve is working correctly. The next step is to button everything up and to route the cables and secure them. Okay, so we verified that the valves work correctly with our remote control, and that's pretty much it for the installation. The next step would be to install the panel, and we already verified that it will fit. So when we install the panel and put all the screws on, then the next step, or you can do this before you install the panel, is to route the wires, secure the wires with some cable ties, making sure that the wires or that the cables are not in contact or very close to the exhaust system. So try to route them away from it so they are, can avoid the excess heat. You'll have some excess cable length left over. Just gather up the excess length, put it into a loop, and just tie it up with some cable ties in and out of the way place. That's pretty much it. That's the installation. It shouldn't take you more, if you had a 360 Modena, shouldn't take you more than an hour and a half to completely finish the job, button everything up, and be able to enjoy the exhaust note of the open valves at any speed that you like. Thank you for watching.